What's the end goal? What am I actually going to feel like when I am healed? Sometimes the idea of healing in and of itself is extremely intimidating if you've been living in a world of oppression. My name is Taylor. You can also refer to me as Cecilia, which is my stage name, which has inspired the name of my company, Music Cecilia LLC. And you are on the Music Cecilia YouTube channel. Welcome, welcome. Please like and subscribe and all of the notifications and all of the fun stuff if you enjoy the content that you see here today. I have some music premiering soon too. My debut album, Expose, which is kind of like folk, ethereal, pop-inspired album about my coming-of-age story from 17 to 26 years old, is going to be released to popular streaming sites soon, so there will be more information about that too. I am no longer working for outside organizations. I am just working for myself. So once again, any support of my original music or support of this channel means so much to me as I continue to try and build my empire. And by the way, my song Empire is available for streaming on Spotify, and the lyric video is on this channel. I'm a huge fan of this artist. This is the fabulous AURORA, and I will be talking about the original music video for her song I Went Too Far.
I went too far when I was begging on my knees, begging for your arms, for you to hold around me. I went too far and kissed the ground beneath your feet, waiting for your love, waiting for eyes to meet, crying, give me some love, give me some love and hold me, give me some love and hold me tight, oh give me some love.
This was released several years ago. The music video was released on YouTube 9 years ago, so this is not a new song by any stretch of the imagination, but I've never talked about it on my channel before, despite doing several AURORA videos. And I'm trying to rack my brain as to why, because I love the combination of kind of heartfelt ballad in some places and upbeat, something you can dance to, give me some love, and that kind of stuff. I love all the different combinations of genres and influences that are in this song, and I really, really love the vulnerable message that the song conveys, or the themes that this song touches on. AURORA is very good at leaving all of her music up to our own interpretation. Even the music video is very symbolic and open-ended and open to interpretation as well. So this music video is very stark and very clean cut. And AURORA is very full of life and full of color and heavy nature influences in this music video. So I know that when she's making a choice that, yes, is influenced by nature because there's water present, but is much more clean cut and a little bit more minimalistic than we typically get from her, I know that that choice is very deliberate and artistic. And what she's doing is you open up to just this open water. It's vast. You can't see any side of land. It's literally just water and sky, which to human beings can be scary and vulnerable. It can feel like we're in this endless abyss. And then there's this ladder that seems to go up into the heavens, and it doesn't have an end point either. And AURORA is wearing an all white kind of like suit or outfit, and she is at the bottom of the ladder looking up at it. And she's breathing very deeply as the first few lyrics of this song begin to play. And the lyrics are, I went too far and kissed the ground beneath your feet. You know, I went too far when I was getting on my knees. Like all of these worship references, and this song automatically, because of the abyss and because of the weight of those lyrics and the intimidation in AURORA's face as she's looking up at this endless ladder that she has to climb that seems to lead to nowhere, already paints this extremely vulnerable picture. Everything about the beginning of this music video is setting you up for an incredibly vulnerable thought or emotion. When she says, I went too far and kissed the ground beneath your feet, there's also a little bit of a hindsight is 2020. This is portraying that feeling of desperation when you are working really, really hard for somebody to love you back, when you feel like the love is not mutual. And that's a very, very generalized statement that can apply to a lot of different situations. But some trigger warning, I might talk a little bit about a human being's experience of trauma here. When somebody's treated you really horribly, you get kind of extra desperate and extra pandering. At least that's one direction it can go in your mind. Some people get very, very kind of like shut everybody out and go the opposite way. But one way that it manifests itself is, now I feel like I have to work extra hard to be loved. I have to work extra hard to pander to somebody's love. And so therefore I get constantly put in these positions in relationships. And this happened to me a little bit before I met my husband, where I felt like I had to work extra hard to prove to people that I was worthy of them loving me. And so yes, it feels sometimes like you're groveling at that person's feet, and you have to fawn, because there's fight. It is a manifestation of the body going into fight or flight, but there's fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. And fawning, you feel like you have to prove to them that you are a worthy person for them to hold on to. This can also be applied to dating relationships or romantic relationships or even friendships, where one person is clearly more into the relationship than the other person, and you're in those final stages of acceptance that the relationship is ending, but you're still kind of clinging on to that last little tiny ounce of hope that the relationship won't end. Those are at least some of the themes that I'm starting to see. Aurora's singing very, very clear here. Her tone is very clear. She's very much in her chest voice. This is not a vocal show-off moment. This is a lyrical delivery moment, and she's using her voice very intentionally to reflect that.
Give me some love and hold me. Give me some love and hold me tight. Yeah. I went too far when I was begging on my knees. When I cut my hand so you could stand and watch me bleed. I went too far and kissed the ground beneath your feet. Standing.
When I cut my hand so you could stand and watch me bleed. She's very good at having very visceral lyrics, and that is like the definition of that. And so it's this idea of like, I would even wound myself or hurt myself for this person. This is like desperation in its strongest form. And a lot of us don't manifest this outwardly, but a lot of us kind of feel the stakes of this. She's hyperbolizing these emotions on purpose, because she's reflecting what our inner minds feel in these situations of desperation for somebody else's love or for somebody else's acceptance. So it's magnified and it's hyperbolized a little bit on purpose. So you may not literally cut your hands to have them watch you bleed, but you might feel like you would be willing to go too far in order to get this person to stay. And you might have those moments of impulsivity where you're like, I would almost do that if they asked me to do that. And sometimes we don't always want to admit those thoughts to ourselves, but we do have them deep in the cavities of our brain. It's kind of one of those, like, you probably wouldn't say it out loud thing, but it's there. It's a fundamental part of human nature. What I love about the way that the imagery of the video changes is now Aurora is transitioned into this darker scenery, this darker dense forest landscape with a lot of moss and dark green colors, and she's in a darker outfit, but she is intentionally in a lot of low status positions, low status praying, groveling, worship positions. And also this idea of like the shaking hands, and she's visibly shaken in this part of the video. She is saying that I am willing to be at my most vulnerable for this person. But in hindsight, now that I'm looking back on the situation, it was too much vulnerability, perhaps more vulnerability than the other person deserved. And yet this was the state I was in at this moment in time. It's incredibly powerful and very universally relatable in that sense, because like I said, we've kind of all experienced some degree of this. But what I absolutely love about her posture and her stance here is she's letting her body completely physicalize it. And that is not something that we always get to do in our everyday life. And art can kind of be a hyperbolization of those moments where we get to physicalize it, we get to hear it sung out loud so that we can have some sort of catharsis through that and actually fully express the emotion. Vocally, she's starting to ramp up. So we hear that hook, that give me some love. that part where she's literally saying the punchline of the song. She's like, please give it to me, please, please, please. This is what I want. And inherently there, like, even if this sounds a little controversial because it is a very low status position to be in, inherently there is a little bit of selfishness in it because you're desperate to get something from that person. And this is, or that being, or that thing, or that moment in time that you're hoping for in your life. Maybe it's a dream you're hoping to follow. You're desperate for it. And so you're just like, just give me some love. And you repeat it over and over again as the hook, not only because it's catchy, not just to create a catchy hook, but also because it is the punchline of the song. And oftentimes very intentional songwriters will include the punchline of the song thematically in hooks so that it is the thing that the audience remembers the most.
In my blood, it was a taste of bittersweet. Crying, give me some love, give me some love and hold me, give me some love and hold me tight. Oh, give me some love, give me some love and hold me, give me some love and hold me tight. Why can't I turn around and walk away, go back in time? I had to turn around and walk away.
She's in a cave. She's once again down in a pit, low status. This beautiful waterfall is like a gorgeous visual, but it's also very intimidating and grandiose. And everything in these shots are meant to make her look small. So she's like very intentionally embodying that vulnerable position as much as possible. And then you see the ladder appear again, and the ladder's even down here in the cave. It's like no matter what environment she's in, she cannot escape this hole that she dug herself into, that she has to get herself out of. She knows it's going to be a climb. She knows it's going to be hard. She doesn't know where the end point is. Oftentimes when we hit a low like this in our life, where we feel like we've gotten to our most desperate, we literally cannot fathom the idea of getting out of it because it doesn't feel like there's an end point. You don't even know what it's like your brain cannot fathom what it would feel like to be fully healed. You've never felt that before. So because it's not familiar and our brain is wired to find familiarity in things, this idea of being fully healed or climbing out of the low point, the point where you were at the most low status in your life, hurts and feels like it's too much, which is why she's undulating, she's moving. And yes, Aurora has this ability to like physicalize, and she moves a lot in her live performances too, but it does have a purpose in this video of, I'm procrastinating on doing this climb. I keep falling down again. I keep wanting to stay down in the pit, stay low status, because at least that's familiar. And on top of that, her vocals continue to raise the stakes. She uses extreme forte dynamics in her vocals. There's heavier studio layering in her vocals that also reflect this. I'm talking a lot about the thematic strands because in music videos like this, the voice is edited to sound as perfect as possible. Of course, there are fantastic vocal things Aurora's doing. I like to analyze her vocals a little bit more in live performances because there's less of a studio quality to them. So the thematic material in this individual music video is what I am focusing on the most.
I'm left behind with an empty hole, and everything I am is gone. I try to reach for another soul, so I can feel whole. Oh, give me some love. Oh, give me some love.
We have this part where she's like, could I turn around and walk away, go back in time? She's saying something along those veins, but it's also intentionally less clear in the vocals. Like the diction is not as good. It's more heavily layered. It's more ethereal. That's an unclear part of a person's journey. This idea of like, I wish I could go back in time. I wish this situation never happened. I wish I never got to this point. And also, once again, I want to repeat the patterns that are more familiar. But then she goes into this second part of the bridge where the diction becomes clearer again, and it's her own vulnerable voice without the layering. These are the more honest moments of this bridge. So I actually want to go back and listen to that again, and then we're going to break down thematically what that could mean.
I'm left behind with an empty hole, and everything I am is gone. I try to reach for another soul, so I can feel.
So she first says, I'm left behind with an empty hole and everything I am is gone. I lost my identity through this situation. How do I get it back again? Because I feel this inner emptiness inside me and it's messing with my motivation. It's really cool that they isolate her singular vocals again and they have less production around her in this moment, because then we can really, really marinate in that message. I tried to reach for another soul so I can feel whole. So maybe she tried to find alternative solutions to the problem. Maybe this did have to do with a love that ended and she's trying desperately to find what some people would coin as a rebound, which is just a desperation to recapture that love. And if the person that I really want is not going to give it to me, maybe I can replicate it so that my brain can repeat the pattern that is comfortable for it with somebody else. As she was climbing up the ladder and she looked away from the ladder and she started to reach out to something, and then like what looked like a dove or a bird flew by her, and it's this idea of another soul being nearby, but it flies away because what she's actually looking for, that person took away from her, or that she doesn't get from that person anymore, depending on the circumstance. What she's actually looking for cannot be found in another person, and instead only has to be found in the internal healing journey, and can only be healed within her own inner work. No extrinsic force is able to help her with this. And then we go back down into the pit. We go back to a scene where she is on the ground in the forest by the huge waterfall, feeling small again, because before we were graduating, we were climbing up the ladder, and then she got about partway up. She got like a quarter of the way up, what we could perceive to be the full length of the ladder, even though we can't really see because it goes into the sky, into an abyss. But then we get the shot of her back down again, because the thing about healing is that you're going to relapse. The thing about healing and getting yourself out of the deepest pits, the hardest pits to get out of in your life, is that you are going to have moments where it feels like one step forward, 50,000 steps backward.
Oh, give me some love. Oh, give me some love.
The hero always has to face the villain or the huge dark force alone. My husband and I, it's not a joking matter, but like my husband and I talk about how like classic Disney movies, that the parents are always killed. And it's because classic Disney movies often involve a young protagonist, and in order to up the stakes and to really see that young protagonist that is already vulnerable as a hero, they have to face the villain alone. But that's because that mimics our own journey of like our own internal work being the only thing that can truly heal us when we get deep down into this pit of desperation and sadness and heartbreak. Aurora is awesome. Let's keep going. Now we're at that point where the dark version of Aurora that's coming from the forest is climbing on the ladder one direction, and the light version of Aurora coming from the water is climbing up in the other direction, and it feels like they're on two separate journeys, and yet they're both Aurora. Like, how do we make sense of that when we're on the trajectory of this healing journey? I think there's two different ways that we can interpret this, and I'm going to kind of extrapolate off of both. Number one thing that pops to my mind is the kind of like the duality of self a little bit, how we often refer to ourselves as like the childlike younger version of ourselves and the version of ourselves that is in the now, or the version of ourselves for the future. And when you're truly on a healing journey after you've hit rock bottom, gone into the pit of desperation, you have your younger self and the kind of this nostalgic aspect of like wanting to reclaim a level of your innocence that you might have lost through that experience. But you also have yourself in the now that is healing from the immediate situation at hand. So you do sort of have a duality of self in that sense. The younger version of you is wounded, and all of those wounds that you experienced in your younger years brought you up to this point where you're in this situation now. Where did this pattern start, and how can I get my childlike innocence back? How can I harken back to the, the good old days where I felt a lot more at peace and at ease with the world around me, and I didn't feel the weight of the world quite so much. And then we have ourselves in the moment that is recovering from the current heartbreak, didn't see the pattern fast enough, and perhaps had to hit rock bottom to heal, but is not in the place of perspective yet, is scrounging for the resources to heal at all. And so you have both of those versions. And a lot of people equate kind of like the innocent, childlike version of ourselves to light. And so maybe the lighter version, the version of water. There's this idea, this is kind of a Judeo-Christian perspective, and I know she doesn't take that perspective a lot in her artwork, but I also think that it's just a part of human nature in general, this idea of baptism or rebirth. Or being birthed from nature, from water. This idea of youth, the fountain of youth, which is also prominent in a lot of mythology, including Greek mythology, being equated to kind of the younger self, being the lighter self that comes from the water, and then the darker self being the older self that's seen things, that's experienced more things, that has been through the weight of the world, and so therefore has a little bit of a heavier armor on and is kind of all consumed by this larger than life landscape around her. And that's what she had to climb herself out of, this duality of self, and how both of them are on their own separate journeys. But if you take the time to hold the hands of both of them through that healing journey, then they come back together at the end, they get their catharsis, and they meet at the other ends of the spectrum. The younger self grows up a little bit, comes to find, not only recapture the wonder of life again, but is able to do it in a more mature and more nuanced, well-rounded way. And then the older self is able to come to peace with the world around them and accept their circumstances so that they can move forward to their future self. The other interpretation that you could take is this idea that the other person on the other end of the situation is on their own healing journey too, and is broken in their own way as well. And maybe Aurora was playing both characters, and they're both on their own healing journeys, and they both resonate with this song in their own way from their own perspective. So those are two different things that you can think of at the end, or you could have an entirely different interpretation and put it in the comments below. That's what I love about music, is I love that we can all glean our own meanings from it. Her vocal delivery and technique massively reflects those themes. At the end of the day, vocalists are storytellers, and Aurora is a storyteller through and through. That's why I love her so much. I had the privilege of getting to see her live in concert a few months ago, and it was a life-changing experience. I saw her live up in Seattle, and it was amazing. I really believe in using the digital world to enhance the artistic landscape around us, and I think YouTube is a great way to do that. So if you want to support the cause, we would love to have you here on the nerdy journey with us. For now, have a wonderful rest of your day. I hope you got something great from this, and I'll see you next time. Bye.